This podcast is brought to you by Ginsler Wealth. The information discussed today is meant to be general in nature and not tailored to your specific investing circumstances. This means that you should talk to your regular Ginsler Wealth advisor or your own advisor before acting on any information we discuss today. Nothing in this podcast is intended to be a solicitation, and past performance does not guarantee future returns. November is Financial Literacy Month, so today we are going back to school. Yay! Today on the Unlimited podcast, we speak with Rotman Taub, keynote speaker and best-selling author, about her award-winning book, The Wisest Investment, teaching your kids to be responsible, independent, and money smart for life. Let's go! Well, welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Unlimited podcast. You may or may not know, we're recording this in November, and you may or may not know that November is Financial Literacy Month. So I thought it would be a wonderful idea to have a podcast focused on financial literacy, and even better, focused on how you can educate your children to be smart, financially and fiscally responsible people. So I'm really excited today to have as our guest Rotman Taub. Rotman is a chartered professional accountant. They call that a CPA. She's a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and her latest award-winning book, The Wisest Investment, Teaching Your Kids to Be Responsible, Independent, and Money Smart for Life, gives parents the information, strategies, and inspiration they need to teach their kids about money. Robin's full bio, as usual, will be in the show notes. I'll tell you just a little bit more about Rotman. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce with high distinction from the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. She is also passionate about improving opportunities for women CPAs to advance into positions of leadership. From 2008 until 2017, she was a member and then chair of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada's Women's Leadership Council. And Rotman puts her money where her mouth is and has two mostly smart, money smart young adults, a son and a daughter. Those are her words, mostly smart. I love this. Rotman describes herself as the Google Translate for personal finance. So we have the benefit of having the full force of Google here with Rotman. So Rotman, thank you very, very much for joining. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Amazing. So I gave a little bit of an intro, but I always find that our guests tend to tell us a lot more and in a lot more fun way, maybe. That didn't sound like English, but that's okay. So do you want to just, before we dive into the core topic here, which is teaching children how to be, financially smart, I guess, in a nutshell, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to this point that you and I are talking here, and you have a fantastic book out, which I've read and I enjoyed a lot. So maybe give
Thanks.
us your journey and then we'll dive into the important stuff for our listeners.
For sure. So, as you said in the intro, I am an accountant by training, but I like to think that I'm not your typical accountant. Accountants have a bit of a bad rap for being boring or dry, and I don't think I'm like that. But I did start out in a very traditional career path. I worked at KPMG, and then I worked at a mid-sized firm that merged with Ernst& Young, and I was in tax. And then I actually left public accounting and went to work for one of the clients of the firm doing real estate syndication, so limited partnerships. And that was interesting. I like real estate as an investment, and just it was an interesting field to be in, and I learned a lot. And then it was a very small, under-resourced firm, and I like to joke around that I had like horrible bosses, like in that movie, and it wasn't sustainable. So I bumped into a friend that I'd gone to high school with who was working at Citibank Canada in derivatives marketing, and he encouraged me to come in for an interview, and I did. And to my great surprise, I got the job because it was a really difficult interview process. And I worked on the trading floor. I wasn't a trader, but I was a marketer. So we interfaced with the traders and our clients essentially. And the team I worked in was focused on financial institutions. And I met amazing people. I'm still really good friends with some people that, I worked there with. And it was just such a different environment. Like people that have seen movies like Margin Call or, those Wall Street kind of movies, Too Big to Fail.
Yeah.
It really does look like that. So that was really cool. And then while I was working there, I had my kids who are now 26 and 28. But it was just very difficult to balance with some other things that were going on in my life at the time. So I took a leave of absence, but I didn't end up going back. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after, I guess it was around the 2008 financial crisis. And there was this focus everywhere, but in Canada as well, on financial literacy and financial capability, and thinking that it was critical to Canadian economic growth and prosperity. There was a task force in Canada. So I started doing some work in that area. Started off with the Ontario Securities Commission. I started doing some writing for their website, and it just kind of went from there. So that's how I felt like it was a good use of my background and my financial, experience, but also my education. And I had credibility as a CPA. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
And then but now and then we got to the point where you've got this book out that,
Yeah.
has gotten accolades, and I think you mentioned, what's the gentleman's name who wrote The Wealthy Barber? Chilton?
Yeah. David Chilton.
David Chilton has made comments about the book. So how did you go from starting to do a little bit of work on financial literacy to, quote unquote, wrote the book
Mhm.
on financial literacy?
Yeah, exactly. So, as you mentioned in the intro, I was volunteering on this council for CPA Canada on women's leadership. And at the same time, they had done some research that came out of the financial crisis that found that 78% of parents had tried to teach their kids about money, but two-thirds said that they hadn't been particularly successful at it, and more than half didn't know what information they needed. So, CPA Canada wanted to create a resource for parents, and it was their first consumer publication. Like, they created a lot of guides for accountants, but never anything for Canadians. And they knew me through my work on that committee, and they knew I had kids, and they just were like, "Would you be interested in writing this book?" And I was like, "Well, it wasn't on my bucket list. I actually never was like, oh, I have to write a book." But I was like, "Actually, yeah, I think I could do this because it's unusually I'm good with numbers. Obviously, I'm an accountant, but I'm also a good writer. I'm good with words. So not a lot of people. Apparently, I've done those types of personality tests and stuff, and
Right.
it's a very unusual combination. So yeah, so that's how it happened. They commissioned me to write the first version of this book, which was called A Parent's Guide to Raising Money Smart Kids. And then fast forward many years, I went my separate ways from them, and I decided to update the book after COVID. When COVID hit, I was like, okay, this is a financial wake-up call for a lot of families, and the world has changed a lot, and it's time to do an update. So I changed the title to The Wisest Investment. That is actually David Chilton's idea. He gave me the
Oh,
idea for the
amazing.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I came to him because he created a really good course, for people that wanna write nonfiction books and market them, and I took the course and used a lot of I used as a blueprint for writing the book, to be honest, and then he was kind enough to give me an endorsement, and he does call it a treasure chest
Mm.
of great ideas presented in short, punchy chapters.
Don't give him too much credit here, because pretty soon he's gonna come and ask for some royalties on this. So you gotta be
Yeah,
careful.
he's been very supportive, as has his son, Scott. So, yeah,
Right.
no, he's great, great guy.
And we wanna understand and talk about some of the key concepts in your book, but at the highest level, maybe, because
Mhm.
people might say, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna it's an interesting topic, but I got other things to do. I'm gonna turn off the podcast now." So,
No.
what I wanna understand at the highest level, then we'll go deep in, is, like, what is the risk to parents of not teaching their children about good financial management? This is the reason why everyone wants to stick around and listen to the rest of this podcast, which is gonna
Yeah.
be amazing. So what's the risk of not doing this?
The risk to parents, and I'm talking about regular Canadians out there, is that most of them can't afford to support their adult children financially. And if you don't give your kids this basic life skill to be able to manage their money and make sound financial decisions throughout their life, which is really the definition of financial literacy, having the knowledge, skills, and confidence to make responsible financial decisions throughout your life, then it could come back to haunt you. Because, as I said, most can't afford to support their adult kids. Or if they do, research shows that they do it at their own expense, like it could jeopardize their own financial futures.
Right.
And with wealthier Canadians, and I know those are some of the people that you work with, there's other concerns. The consequences are if their kids aren't ready and prepared to be good inheritors, they're not financially mature. If they're not going to be good stewards of wealth, I think that concerns the wealth creators or the wealth preservers, that they want to make sure that their kids are going to be good stewards. So that's from the parents' perspective. And from the kids' perspective, as I said, if you don't teach them, they're going to be lacking a basic life skill. You just need to know this stuff. You could start to form bad habits early that become hard to break as you get older. And thirdly, if you don't have a good handle on your finances, it can cause a lot of stress and it can even lead to more serious physical and mental health issues.
Okay. So this is serious stuff and it's important stuff. And I agree with you because part of this podcast is trying to educate folks. We've done 101 sessions on bonds and we've talked about other real estate and other types of investing. Like these are things that I think everyone needs to know. And of course, we're here for our clients, for those who need it. So let's dive into maybe some of the key concepts in the book. And what I always love is lists. Like what are the
Oh, good.
5 things of this or 11 things of that, and I'm using specific numbers because I know you have a 5 and I know you have an 11. Maybe you could break us down, how you walk through, teaching folks about the
Yes.
or what are the core concepts you impart in your various key lists there?
Yeah. So I created this framework and so basically any topic that you would teach your kids or talk to your kids about money would fall under what I call the 5 pillars of money, one of these 5 pillars.
Yeah.
So those 5 pillars are earn, save, spend, share, and invest. And the 5 pillars never change. But as your kids grow up and get older, the specific topics and examples under each of the 5 do. So the framework is the 5 pillars, and then I've broken it up into 4 different age groups. So young kids, 5 to 8, preteens, 9 to 12, teenagers, 13 to 17, and emerging adults, 18 and over. So you can think of it as like a 5 by 4 matrix, and anything that you'd want to discuss with your kids has to be age appropriate. So it would be, what is a topic under one of those 5 pillars of earn, save, spend, share, and invest for that specific age group that my child is at right now. And that's how the book is written. So the first chapter is really for parents and it explains what we talked about just now, why teaching your kids about money is the wisest investment. It gets into financial literacy in school, but then it also helps parents get their own financial house in order so they could lead by example. And then each of the subsequent 4 chapters, there's only 5 in total, is for a specific age group. And again, is
Right.
structured, each chapter is structured the same under the 5 pillars. And it's really practical. You've read it, Brian, like family discussions, things to do, just really like very actionable stuff for any parent to be able to pick it up, just figure out, what the issue is that they want to discuss or what's come up in the family and be able to know what to say.
So, yeah, no, great, and it's laid out quite well. So, maybe just to give folks a sense of what you mean, and you don't have to go through every single age group, but can we pick one of these 5 pillars, whatever you think would be the best, and say, well, if it was for a smaller child, I guess you would teach it by doing X, and as they progress, this is how it progresses.
Sure. Sure. So, like, let's just start with earn because if you don't earn anything, then you really don't have the other choices of saving, spending, sharing, or investing.
Right.
So so even young kids earn because they get money from the tooth fairy or for birthdays and holidays. And then, as I said, they have to make choices about what to do with it. So I think with in the young kids chapter, I talk about having a piggy bank because again, even in this digital world with young kids, it really starts with cash. And I
Yeah.
explain bills and coins and how to play counting games and stuff like that. When we move on to preteens, we're talking about allowance and we're talking about odd jobs that they be old enough to do or qualified for, like babysitting is the best example. Being a camp counselor, a referee for sports, and earning that way. And then again, they're old enough to open a youth account. So that's really under saving, but you can see how things change as your kids get older. They don't have a P bank.
Yep.
For teenagers, that's the age where many teenagers get their first real job. And some parents still give an allowance, but others don't. So again, we get into like how should an allowance be used in your family? Is it a money management tool? Is it payment for chores? Is it a both, a hybrid? And their first real job and their first real paycheck. Because a lot of teens do work, they work retail, you see them around. And
Yeah.
especially in the last years with COVID, a lot of teenagers were doing jobs that previously would have been hard for them to get, but there was so much desperation. And then the last age group would be emerging adults. So mostly they're pursuing post secondary, but they're probably working summers or even during the school year to help pay for university. And some of them may be doing co op terms at university as well. So just we talk a little bit more about filing a tax return and taking advantage of tax breaks for students.
Right. So I want to I have a whole host of things to go through, but you mentioned
Sure.
the A word, which is allowance. We pause there for a second, and I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out, do we do an allowance for the kids? If we do, how much? Do they have to work for it? Do they get it
It
regardless?
is.
Would be curious to get your thoughts as the expert here.
It is the most commonly asked question I get, I would say, is allowance. And I think the reason is that some people want to tie the allowance to chores around the house because they want their kids to understand that money doesn't come for free and you have to earn money. Whereas in other families, they just believe that an allowance should be given so that kids have the opportunity to manage money and make mistakes when the stakes are low and make choices and live with the consequences. And we can talk about that a bit more. And they feel that the chores should be done out of a sense of family responsibility and everyone should be pulling their weight. Again, it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. It can be a combination. It can be a hybrid, a basic allowance. So they have the experience managing money. And then if they want to earn more, they can do extra chores around the house that you would maybe have to pay someone else to do, but still contributing to the household because I just think that in a family, everyone has to pull their weight and pitch in. And even as your kids get older and they no longer live with you, you want them to come back and help you sometimes.
Right.
So, that you don't want them to think that like everything comes with a price either. So you have to do what's in line with your values and also your means when it comes to an allowance.
Okay, so thanks for that. So that's the do you or do you not, do an allowance. Then how do you figure out what the amount of the allowance is?
When your kids are little, young kids, you can probably use a rule of thumb, like $1 per year of age per week or 50 cents. So your 7-year-old would get, let's say, $7 a week. But once they get to be preteens and they're a little more independent and they're out in the world, it has to be based on a simple budget that you put together, like who's paying for what. Mostly you're paying at that stage. And what's it going to cover? Are they going out with their friends? How often? Just those kinds of things, needs versus wants. And then once
Yeah.
they become teenagers, you might want to shift more responsibility to them with their budget. And we'll talk about that to make them feel more accountable over their spending. Like they're spending their own money. So again, a little more comprehensive budget that covers more things. And maybe you only give them their allowance monthly. So they have to learn how to manage, resources over time.
Right. This not to digress, but this conversation reminds me, I don't know if you're allowed to mention this TV show anymore at all, but The Cosby Show. I don't know.
Oh, I know which.
Do you remember this one where Theo says he wants to sort of handle his own money and whatever,
Yep.
and the father, which we won't mention his name because he's done some terrible things, basically walks through with Theo. Okay, so you start with this amount of money. Are you gonna, how are you gonna eat? Are you gonna go out? He says, are you gonna, get clothes? He says, oh yeah, I gotta look fine. So he takes some extra money, and at the end of
It's
the
like
day,
Monopoly money or real money, I
I
forget.
don't
Yeah, but he
remember.
literally
At the end
is
of the
looking.
day, I think Theo has like $2 left. He's like, "See, everything's good, Dad." He goes, "You gonna have a girlfriend?" "Oh yeah, gone." Has no money left.
I
Anyway,
used to play that clip in, like, speeches that I did a long time ago, and then, like you said, I was like, "I don't think I can show this anymore
right.
because he's canceled," but it was so perfect, and it was so funny.
Uh, so, anyways, hopefully people don't mind us talking about that. Okay, so got the 5 pillars of money. We talked about allowance a little bit. Um, Maybe talk about, you have this concept of 11 healthy habits of financial management, and 11 sounds like a lot, and, you might be
Mhm.
talking for 20 minutes straight here, so but in maybe a
No.
tight fashion, what are your 11 healthy habits of financial
Oh, you
management?
want them all, okay.
Everyone should listen up here closely.
Yeah, so, again, these are really for parents so they can get their own financial house in order and lead by example and model, be good financial role models for
Right.
their kids.
Yeah,
So, here they
I
are.
guess you sorta can't teach your children how to be great with money, finances, etcetera, if you're not, walking the
The
walk, I
talk.
guess, as they say?
Yeah, walking the talk. So
Walking the talk. Walking the talk, yeah.
exactly, and, because kids, especially teenagers, they're gonna call you out on it if they think you're being a hypocrite, but that's, again, one of the reasons parents don't talk about it or shy away from it because 'cause they're afraid they're gonna be called out on their mistakes, but no one's perfect.
Right.
It's okay to make mistakes and to learn from them and share those with your kids, so don't let that stop you. Okay, so the 11 healthy habits are knowing where you stand financially. As an accountant, that's a good one for me, like a net worth worksheet and a cash flow statement. Living within your means is number 2. Number 3 is related. It's saving or paying yourself first. Number 4 is understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. Should we keep going or should we encourage people to buy the book so they can find out what the next seminar?
Well, no, keep going, and then I'll ask you a few
Uh,
questions on some of these.
Sure. Okay. Number 5, set up a financial safety net. Number 6, know the difference between needs and wants. Number 7, teach delayed gratification and set financial goals. Number 8, track your spending. Number 9, save now for your children's education. Number 10, present a united money front. And number 11, prepare a will and powers of attorney.
Right. Okay, that is a lot.
Those are them.
Maybe
Yeah.
talk about quickly what just let's just hit on a couple of those topics. Talk about good and bad debt, maybe. What does
Mhm.
it mean for folks?
Right. So good debt is debt that is attached to an asset. So you've had to finance something, but that thing, that asset has the potential to go up in value. So classic example is a mortgage on a house in normal circumstances where the house appreciates in value over time. Or if you borrow money to invest, in stocks and bonds in your RSP or something, that would be another good example. In Canada, student loan debt could be considered good debt because, as long as it's reasonable and manageable, it's an investment in your future earnings potential. And as long as you can pay it off in a reasonable period of time, it's good debt. Bad debt is essentially consumer debt. So we're talking about credit cards, just personal lines of credit that are used to finance like
Right,
stuff that doesn't necessarily go up in value. In fact, it's usually doesn't have much resale value. Or like a department store credit card debt would also be considered bad debt.
right. Okay, and then so that's good. That's important for people to understand, which
Mhm.
also falls into the living within your means, item too, because if you're taking
Yes.
on debt to buy clothes or material stuff that doesn't go up in value, maybe you should stop doing that.
Well,
And
that's
what What
knowing where you stand, right? Because if you're preparing a net worth worksheet periodically, let's say even annually, you'll see if your debt's growing, your assets are shrinking, when it should be going in the other direction.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about the children's education? Because there's some really nice freebies the government provides for folks in Canada that want to save for education, and even with some of the families we work with or high net worth families, sometimes we don't really see RESP accounts either set up or maximized, and so maybe give a few points on that.
Yeah. I mean, they just don't bother with it because they don't need it. But so yeah, so for most Canadians, if you don't take advantage of an RESP to save for your child's post-secondary education, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah,
And the reason is that the government will match up to it's 20% up to $500 a year. And and so if you make a contribution to this plan that you set up, a registered education savings plan, you'll automatically get this deposit of 20% from the government. So you put in 500, you're getting 100. And a
right.
20% return risk free is fantastic.
Amazing.
So, obviously you have to use, the money in the plan needs to go towards your children's post-secondary education. But I would say it's fairly broad and how, it's not just university, it's colleges, it's trade schools, etc. And if you do a family plan, if one child doesn't go, it can all be used for the other. There is a lifetime maximum on the grant. Now, the amounts you contribute are not tax deductible, as you know. So you don't get a tax deduction on the way in. But on the way out, any income that's earned in the plan is taxed in the student's hand. And that's nice because the student's usually in a lower tax bracket than the parents.
Right.
So, and they also are entitled to tuition tax credits and stuff like that. So it's such a great tool to use. And I think even if you're ultra high net worth, like why not? It's
No,
still free
free
money.
yeah, we
It's
we
not
all
income test. It's not means tested. They don't say you're not eligible if if you have income of this or anything. Anyone can use it.
yeah. No, for us, it's a no-brainer when you can get a 20% free return on your money with no risk whatsoever. We
Yeah,
highly encourage everyone to do it, for sure. Okay, so sort of digressed a tiny bit there, but, just trying to flesh out a little
that's
bit of
okay.
your healthy habits. Let's turn to okay, so we understand the risk of not teaching children about wealth. We understand the five pillars and the healthy habits, but how that how do parents actually get down to the teaching part? This as you say, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily really easy for folks to do. Everyone out there may not feel that they're the smartest person financially. They may be
Mhm.
geniuses at what they do in their own lives
For
and
sure.
professions, but maybe not finance if that's not their thing. So, how do parents overcome this challenge of of having these conversations?
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. So again, like as I said, the research shows that the biggest challenges are lack of time, lack of knowledge, or lack of opportunity. So lack of time, I try to encourage parents to look for teachable moments, opportunities to build a money lesson into your daily lives as they crop up naturally. Because we're always transacting and interacting with money, things are going to come up and your kids are going to ask questions about them. Like, when you pay for something, tapping with your credit card or your phone, they're going to ask you what you're doing. Or maybe you take the initiative and explain the difference between a debit card and a credit card. There's so many, I mean, when you're doing your tax return or gathering the information to do your tax return, you can explain what you're doing and why. When you're grocery shopping, it's an opportunity to talk about budgeting and comparison shopping. Like it comes up. If you look for them, you'll find them everywhere. So that's like a great solution to the I don't have time. Like you don't have to set aside special time. You can do it while you're driving them to school or to soccer or whatever. The I don't have the knowledge is another thing. And that's really where I hope the book can help because as I said, it does break it down by age and by the five pillars. Any topic you could think of it is addressed in an age appropriate way. It is hard as we talked about before, like, if you feel like you're not good at it yourself, it's embarrassing, so you might avoid it, but just think about your kids. You definitely don't want them to suffer from the consequences we discussed. And it is really, really important. So maybe it's something you can learn together. If you're not great with this yourself, you know, it is something that you and your kids can learn together. And then besides being a good financial role model, which we talked about, which is another way that you're teaching your kids and it doesn't take any extra time because they are just watching and listening and learning from you.
Yeah.
Another thing that people don't think about is using your values. So your personal values are the things in life that are most important to you that you're willing to take a stand for. And they can be used to help guide and prioritize financial decisions and set meaningful goals. So I think that that's a tactic that parents can be a little more clear about with their kids and can have an open conversation about. And I even created a self assessment tool called the Values Validator that people can find for free on robintaub.com to help people get clear on what their values are because your top values are the things that you can use to, as I said, set goals, prioritize, just keeping those things top of mind and letting your kids do the exercise too and finding out what's important to them.
Okay. No, good advice. Really good. I just want to touch on one thing you mentioned, and actually, I think this aligns with maybe some of the updates you just made to your book. But you were talking about,
Mm.
you're out and you're tapping your phone to pay for things, and that may be a time to teach children, what's going on here. You know, the world has changed a lot, and I think you mentioned it earlier. Cash there's not a lot of cash that I think most people are using on a day-to-day basis. You tap your phone and all of a sudden, magically, you can pay for things. If you're my kids, you magically pay for things with your phone. Um, how do you how do you explain in this new world, money and how it works and where it
Yeah.
comes from? And,
Mhm.
when you tap, where is that
Yeah.
originating? How do you do that today versus, you know, another day in the past?
Well, the age appropriate thing is important to keep in mind here because with young kids, it's going to be too hard for them to grasp digital or electronic payment. So with them, stick to the cash. Even though you're not using a lot, you probably have some around the house or you use it here and there. I mean, I really hardly use it anymore. And I was just in Spain and in Europe, they are so cashless. It's
Right.
like even more than here. In the US, I think they're still a little bit behind. People still use cash more there. So, but with your kids that are preteens that might have their own smartphones, that are a little more digitally savvy, and I think you can, they probably get it. Like it's money, but it's just not physical or tangible. And you can explain that like your digital wallet on your phone is pretty much the same as your credit card, but you still have to have the ability to pay for that at some point with actual money that again might be all digital, but
Comes
you're
comes from the
still
earned
spending
piece.
real yeah, you're still spending real money. And again, with cash, there's that visceral pain of loss when if you're still doing it, handing a 20 over, it's like, oh no, I'm getting only like a
I
five
I
back.
I I feel the pain with the tapping too, trust me.
Do you? Yeah, a lot of people. So I was going to say, if you tap, what you can do is you can set up notifications on your phone or alerts, or if you have a
Yeah,
smartwatch, you will get a reminder every single time you use it. And that will, believe me, remind you that you're going to see that on your statement or that's coming out of your bank account right away if it's a debit card. So
right.
those bringing that friction back to your personal finances will help you remember because otherwise it's so frictionless. Spending is still so frictionless. It is so frictionless, but saving is still really hard. And it's so tempting to just tap, tap, tap. And like you said, if it's your kids and they don't have their own credit card because they're too young, you're paying. So they're spending your money. And that is easy to do.
I am well aware. Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna take a moment to
Mhm.
cry. Um, no, so one other topic, in the spirit of, money today or in this new world, which is, I don't know if this is financial management, but it's something that children have to be aware of as it relates to money is, all the fraud and phishing and
Yeah.
spam and cyber stuff. I don't know. I can't recall. Do you address that? I think you address that a little bit in your
I
book, but
do.
how do
I
you
do.
teach kids to be ridiculously careful these days? Because I think with the cell phones and the TikTok and
I
all this stuff,
know.
they're signing up for everything. They're just and how do you make sure that they're not you know doing something to cause a financial problem?
Again, I think it could be a teachable moment because I feel like every day now I'm getting these texts that are fraudulent, like
Yeah,
UPS, your package wasn't delivered, CIBC,
yeah,
your PIN is wrong. So show your kid that you're constantly getting these things. And you can even point out often with phishing, there's a lot of little tells like
yeah.
grammatical mistakes, weird punctuation. Um, always err on the side of caution as do not click, do not interact with it. And with emails too, you can see who the sender is. Sometimes it looks like it's coming from Apple or your bank, but if you click on the sender, you can do that safely and you see it's just some weird account.
Yeah.
Do not touch those things because I mean, I feel like everyone has made that mistake once. My son, who's in his late 20s, just got fish. He scanned a QR code in a coffee shop and it went to some weird thing, and I don't know what happened, but his car got compromised. So, you just have to it is really be on alert, and there's so many, like, horrible scams out there, like, for parents and grandparents to be aware of too. Have you heard about this grandparent scam? Where they say your grandchild's been in a horrible
Oh,
accident
yeah,
and
yeah.
come right away with 10,000 like, there's and with AI and deep fakes now, they're getting so clever at how I'm just always so suspicious of everything now, like healthy
Right.
skepticism. You gotta talk to your kids about it and show them examples.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're coming to the end here. I thought I would ask you, before I have a few more questions for you, maybe more on the fun side, but not that
Mhm.
this isn't fun, by the way. This is my favorite thing on earth. But if I said, okay, there's only, you have to leave our listeners with one key tip for
Mhm.
families to get their financial house in order or to teach their children good financial habits. One thing to take away from this 30 some odd minutes here, or to take away, they don't have your book, but of course we'll put a link in the show notes so people can get it if they want. But what's the one key tip that people should remember coming out of this?
It's hard to pick one because as I said, I have like my 3 key strategies, but I think being a good financial role model and leading by example. So try to get your own financial house in order first.
Yeah.
You can learn along with your kids because they are watching and listening and learning and they are aware of both the good and the bad habits. So you are such an important role model for your kids. And also research shows that kids really want to learn from their parents. They want their parents to be the ones to teach them. So if I have to pick one, that's the one.
Okay. Amazing. So thank you so much for the financial literacy chat, but now on to very
And
important topic here. So listeners will know that I'm a big music fan, and a little birdie told me that you might have met Bruce Springsteen one time,
yes,
and
I did.
I want to hear this story.
Okay, so it was around
Wait, were
2007
you the
or
one
8.
dancing on the stage and dancing in the dark?
No, that was Courtney Cox,
Okay,
but
just
no,
making sure. Yeah,
that would be fun. That would be a real claim to fame.
yeah.
No, so I've always been a huge Springsteen fan. Like I love music and I go to tons of shows and I've always gone to see him at concert. And one of my good friends is also a huge Springsteen fan, and her cousin is married to now, but maybe dating at the time, the actor Edward Norton, and he is friends with Springsteen. So my friend Sherry got us backstage in Toronto when he was here, and it was so cool because it was at the I guess I think it was the old Maple Leaf Gardens, maybe even? No, I can't even remember now where it was, or the Scotiabank Center. But we went backstage and there was like people back there, like Canadian music royalty. Like I saw Blue Rodeo back there, but they like take us into, I think we went into Patty's dressing room first. So Bruce's wife, who's in the band, and she was like getting her hair and makeup done. And she was so friendly and she gave us her CD. She had like a solo record And then it was like 20 minutes before the show started and they like take us into Springsteen's dressing room. And I'm like, isn't he like doing his warm up exercises or
Uh,
does he have better things to do than like just talk to us? Like, I cannot believe he's doing this. And he did. And he like gave us all a hug. And I think I had my son's guitar strap because my son plays and a sharp beat, but I was just like too embarrassed or like I just felt bad bugging him 20 minutes before the show to sign it. So I didn't. But he gave us a hug. He was so friendly. He's just like, he's such a cool guy. And then we were like in the pit, like really, really close for the show. And like, it was like a dream come true.
he was singing to you. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, that's good. Great story. Uh, Last question that we ask all our guests. I know you listen to a number
I
of our
heard it in the
podcasts,
last,
so we usually spring this on people, but you might know. So, our theme here, we are an independent wealth management firm. We really have the sort of ability to look around for anything our clients need and help clients in any way on the financial side. That's sort of our mantra. And so we say, our tagline is your wealth unlimited when you're with Gensler Wealth. So I'd like to ask our guests, if you weren't doing what you're doing and the world is unlimited to you, you could do anything in life, anything in the world, what might you be doing today
I'd either be a backup singer,
for
like in a
Springsteen?
great band, like the Stones or Springsteen, or a roadie, like something where I'd be like around that, but I
Right,
wouldn't, I don't ever think like I would be the Springsteen or the Taylor Swift.
right.
I'd be just happy to be a part of it in some other background kind of way. So that's my answer.
Okay, amazing. I love it. All right. Well, listen, Robin, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
shedding some light
Thank
on
you.
the wisest investment. We're always looking for risk-free investments here at Gensler Wealth. We generally can't find anything that's risk-free, but I will say teaching your kids about financial literacy is definitely a risk-free investment, I think. So thanks for sharing that with us. We will have your full details in our show notes. We'll have a link to the book for those who want to read it and get it. And just wish you the best and happy learning to those for Financial Literacy Month in November. And
Right.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Thanks.
Thanks.
The Unlimited podcast is hosted and produced by Brian Gensler and is edited and mixed by myself, David McMillan. This podcast is not to be taken as investment advice. If you like what you heard, don't forget to rate the podcast and follow us on social media at Gensler Wealth. Thanks for listening and see you next time.